Because in the present moment you mentioned the abundance. Because in the present moment, it is only the present moment in which you can choose your future. You can do this, you can do this, you can go for A, go for B. But if you are obsessed on this part, as I mentioned, on the journey for something that you are obsessed about or are pursuing, or maybe intellectually you think is right, then you do not have abundance of choices. You have one choice, you go for it. And this is one, I think, of the things within the hustler and grinding community and all of the YouTube, red pill stuff, this masculinity that you should, be determined and go, whatever the obstacles. But sometimes those obstacles and all of those bad things that are happening are because maybe this thing, if you achieve it, you will feel miserable. Maybe it will fail your life. Maybe it will destroy you because you would lose your health on the way. So the present moment is abundant because now in the present moment you can create.
And welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu Taoist Master Sun Qing, and I have an incredible guest here today looking into all things past, present, and future. Aleksander Czeszkiewicz. Almost there. I got it. I was close. If I'm a butcher, please forgive me. I'm very excited to have him on the podcast because this gentleman has a very great insight into, what we may consider, and it's actually quite poignant because it is the title of his book, Deja Vu, but the idea of what's really going on, what's really going on when you have that moment. So without any further ado, I'd love to welcome Aleksander to the podcast. And why don't you share a little bit more with our audience, a little bit about your backstory leading up to where we are today?
Hello everyone, my name is Aleksander Czeszkiewicz and thanks for having me on your show. I'm from Poland, so that's why my name is Czeszkiewicz. I'm from Poland and I'm just 20 years old, turning 21 this year, so I'm very young, and I wrote my book Deja Vu Has Everything Already Been just at the age of 17. It is like a good book, not like 100 pages, it's like 400 plus pages. I wrote it very early, and because of the legal stuff, I needed to wait a year to publish it because I needed to be 18 years old. So I started, researching and being interested in those topics, not only about, because my book is mainly about lost civilizations and cyclical time, but I started being interested in, let's say, the alternative, not only science, but the alternative point of view of our reality, because according to the mainstream there's only matter and the interactions between the matter. And you on your channel, I've seen you are talking about spirituality, metaphysics. I'm also interested in that, so I started being very conscious about the reality that we are in at, I would say, a relatively young age, about 15, 16, something like that. And I was always bored at school because of the things that I was learning there, so I had plenty of time to read books, watch and listen to podcasts, and some interviews with leading experts, not only in the areas of physics, metaphysics, but also spirituality, of course, history and stuff like that. And I was actually not only bored at school, but also a little bit fed up with the information that I was learning. It was only about the matter, about human beings being just physical, biological machines. And I had an intuitive view that there is something more to this universe. And I started exploring, and I came to a realization that we do not know, when it comes to the official scientific paradigm that is prevailing, I think, in the entire Western world. And I came to a conclusion that we do not know much about the surrounding reality. So I started digging deeper and deeper, and that led to me writing very early my first book about lost civilizations, which focused mostly on the history that we do not know much about, or the most ancient history. But parallel to that, because my book, about history and cyclical time is to a large extent evidence materialistic based. It is like the logical side of the brain, like left hemisphere of the brain. But parallel to those, like research, gathering information, gathering sources, reading and questioning things about our history, parallel to that, I had a little bit of spiritual journey. Some people would call spiritual awakening. I was, started to being more in tune with the universe as it is, without having like any assumptions. Like in science, one of the assumptions is materialism, that only matter and its interactions exist and stuff like that. So it was a very, very interesting journey, and everyone, on podcasts like this and other are lots of people are very fascinated by it. But for me, I'm not like being proud of it or something, but for me it just was. It was like you mentioned in our conversation before the podcast that you like conversations which are in flow, and I would say that this journey was like a journey, like a hero's journey. It was like in flow, in tune, things suddenly happening, but everything was in alignment. So for me it was just normal, but it was a journey.
Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible insight. I find it interesting your discovery of many things, because from my insight and understanding and doing this consciously, now I've been doing this very thing that we're speaking of for thousands of lives before this one, but let's just say that this lifetime I've been consciously aware of this sort of inner awareness, being inside the center of the center of the center of all things, being realized as something greater than the 3D reality that you perceive before you, for probably well over, biologically, probably 32, 33 years. But for you, your insight to see what you see, to understand what you understand, does not require an age of any kind. So your epiphany and the fact that you've come to this realization at the biological age that you're at is profound. And it really takes nothing away from the validity of your insight and your mastery, which I believe is sort of something that you're a little reserved by, that perhaps maybe you won't be greeted with the same welcome due to your biological age. But I find that's absolutely irrelevant, because insight of information, access of information, can be instantaneous. And I show people this all the time, that you can create a conscious awareness that goes beyond this 3D reality and obtain information instantaneously that other people cannot, if they're bound by the construct of this duality. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm very, very, very impressed with your just basically realizing who you are, and on that discovery of who you are already within your biological processes and your age as it is today. So congratulations on where you're going and what you've already uncovered in your own journey. So now that we've sort of taken that more of an insight into what we both agree is something greater than what we are seeing in front of us, what would you say is the pinnacle, the moment of your greater insight, and what do you do to sort of continually expand on this awareness?
Mm-hmm. It was on point what you said about the age and creating and even evolving within a very short time frames that are beyond like causality, beyond the casual like cause and effect thinking, because sometimes when we think of, oh, I will write a book, or oh, I will research that topic, etc., if we are thinking only logically, from the logical perspective, from the, let's say, left brain hemisphere, we are thinking, oh, it will take ages, etc. But I realized that if I let go of any assumptions that I may have, anything about, the topic I'm learning or the thing I'm doing, and if I go into the flow, magic happens, and
Mhm.
everything, I think, and it is I think a casual thing when it comes to people who experience flow, that you are doing something and you are doing so much, and then you check the hour, and it was just a little bit, a short period of time that would be for a logical mind to comprehend, that it would be impossible. Oh, I did it in just 10 minutes, but it was, even experiencing it, it was like, it's been ages, like 4 hours, 8 hours, but it's 15 minutes, it's 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
also, when you were talking about the progress, the evolution, I actually, when it comes to, heightening and going forward, I feel like I'm going backwards when it comes to the age. I'm feeling like I'm going to when I was 7, when I was 5 years old, to that state of consciousness. And I feel, like I felt when I was 5 or 7. And I think that, let's say, the first, after realization that there is something bigger in this universe, the first thing is to reprogram yourself and, clear out all of the false programming in your mind, all of the false assumptions. And I found out that, during my everyday activities, I was having so many assumptions. For instance, about writing a book, that it is so hard, I have to do that. And if I let go of those assumptions, because often we are very sad because we assume something, oh, I will write in that way this chapter, and we fail and we feel like a failure. But if we let go of all of the previous assumptions, it happens that we are made to write it in a different way, to make something different. The same is with many people when it comes to the career paths, when it comes to doing something. Last year I've been into, because after I first published my book in Polish, then it took me a year to translate it into English, right? So after that, I was a little bit burnt out, and I
Mhm.
was like a little bit too much obsessed with the marketing, because it took me so many things to do that. It was also an assumption, of course, to write and translate and do everything with this book, to the cover, I did everything myself. So I was too much into the marketing, getting people to actually see the book, etc. And I started having again false assumptions, about how people would, discover the book, how it would be a little, how it would sell more, etc. That, and I felt miserable inside of me. But I take a break, etc. And when I let go of everything clicked. That I had those assumptions in my mind about how I would do it and how I wanted to do it, but it was all false. There was something better for me. So the first thing is just let go of everything and become aware, because we have, maybe most of us, but maybe some of us have it obstructed. We have an intuitive feeling within us. And if we are all the time within our minds, and we are chasing something logically, chasing the next maybe thing that we'll write about when it comes to writing our book, or the next thing that we'll do in our businesses, in our, let's say, careers, etc. If we are all the time like, a hamster on a wheel in this mind, we cannot comprehend that there may be something different, something maybe better for us. And when we just sit, relax, we can feel that, oh, there is something. And it is a really cool feeling. Maybe I should pursue this and not everything that I am having programmed in my mind. So that is one of those revelatory things, and that's why I would say that the progress is sometimes regressing a lot. I sometimes literally feel like a few years before. I am like the reality is the same, but the feeling is like 5 years ago, etc. Because I think when it comes, because my book is also about cyclical time, etc., we often think about cycles, karmic cycles, etc. And I think that there is some truth to that, because if we are all the time within our programming, then all of the things that should have happened to us, because let's assume that our life is to some extent with some surprises, presents for us, some things happening. We meet people accidentally, we do accidentally that and that, we go on holidays with a total accident, etc. But when we are in this logical ego thinking mind, we are stopping ourselves from experiencing those blessings, because we are not going for them on our path, but we are taking a turn into those things that we assume are real, that we should go this way, etc. So sometimes it is going back because you didn't experience something 5 years ago or 3 years ago, because you were so obsessed with your thinking and with your assumptions, maybe some prideful ego that I will go this way and it will be the best, etc. And we have to go back, maybe degrade and downgrade a few years, maybe a few levels, to experience again those things that we missed, and to have all of those missed opportunities back. And in many times, sometimes when we are miserable, etc., we think that we lost something, that we lost an opportunity, that we lost this, and this. But then when you become aware, you will realize that this is a pattern, that we missed a opportunity, but it isn't a single opportunity. It is like an archetype for a opportunity, like maybe someone else can give us a similar opportunity. So it doesn't matter if we lost something. If we are meant to experience it, we will experience it maybe a little bit later, because we were so obsessed in our, maybe sometimes, going after something, chasing something in our lives. But we'll experience, maybe we cannot experience the same exact thing, but we'll experience a similar thing that will have the same, let's say, vibration, the same feeling to us. So it will, be coming back to that. So I think that sometimes we have to go back in order to move forward.
I think that's beautiful, my friend, because I mean, within Taoism, we call this, you talk about the flow, we call it Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort. And, regressing, as you would say, going backwards to move forward, is what I like to tell people, to be childlike in your nature. When you observe and realize everything at face value, everything becomes this present moment. And so the simplicity of reality is very much past, present, and future right now. That's it. That's the truth, the true understanding of all things. This is what we call access to the Wu Ji, which is between the stillness between the breath in and the breath out, which is the Tao, the mother of all things. And so when you get to that, just the way we're sinking now, and you're getting a charge of energy up your spine, and we're both pulsating together, this energy that you speak of, how do I know? I see it first, and then I feel it. So I can see it in your aura and feel it just as you are. This is a connection. This is an understanding. This is the chi that you speak of. And so all these types of things are the interconnection in this that we speak of. And I think it's very appropriate using the words deja vu as the title of your book, because, I mean, we're remembering what we already know. And within Taoism, one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor, always says, when you accept you know nothing, you'll know everything. And so
Exactly.
that truth, access to all things. There is no exception to the rule. That supercharge you just got right now, that epiphany, poof, that's the exciting part of realizing the interconnection of this. Then with a much deeper understanding, if you want to look further within the lens of, say, maybe a scientific model, which is a language that is so in its infancy in relation to the human timeline in the history of everything, but it gives someone another access point to describe what it is that they're experiencing, which I believe history and languages are such a profound way to get a better insight into these very things, is to
Mm-hmm.
in tune ourselves and give ourselves, as I would put it, as we put it within Taoism, you and I are just individual collective facets of the singular, the oneness. And
Mm-hmm.
so of that diamond we call life. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at it in a different, from one facet to another. You're at one end of the table, I'm at the other, and we're looking at this object, and you say tomato, I say tomato, but reality is it's all part of one consciousness. And
Mm-hmm.
once we tap into that, realizing just the rapport that we have ourselves, but quite frankly, rapport is an interesting thing. It's sort of like an ability to surrender to what is the present moment, is sort of like a subsection of that. But that interconnection that you have, just it sort of plays into the energetics that are all things. Everything is energy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what is that? You mentioned quite a great point of the vibration, the frequency. People speak a lot of this character by the name of Tesla, which I think is interesting. I think it's kind of like reinventing the wheel. I speak of Taoism, that consciously I can tap into the history of Chinese history dating back to 10, 20, 30, 50,000 years. And people are like, what are you talking about? It's only recorded as 6,000 BC, pictographs. The beginning of our oracle bone reading dated back to 6,000 BC. Well, we go beyond that. Now, this would then put in question the timeline of history, the understanding of the human DNA strand, and that it's quite evident and clear that we need to perhaps stop for a moment. And as you would put it, our assumptions of what we thought history of the human being is absolutely false. With the
Mm-hmm.
DNA, with the understanding of DNA as we know it today, that quite frankly, you and I have been operating in this same form, humans, for over 200,000 years, that they can
Mm-hmm.
date back, and probably, and not probably, I can tell you beyond that, but let's just
Mm-hmm.
say 200,000. So there goes that old history timeline model of the evolution of the troglodyte to human form that we speak of right now. So why don't you speak more to me about this? Do you enter into any type of like method to continue your progression of what you've considered as regression, to go inside, to go outside?
Yes, it is very cool that you mentioned this timeline. I totally agree with the genetic estimation of 200,000 years ago, and it is what I describe in my book. So I will come to that in a moment. But first, to finish this thread of regressing, it is exactly what you mentioned, that when we, as I mentioned, relax, you mentioned, being in the moment right now in the Dao. So, it is, you mentioned that it is like a form of abundance. And it's exactly that, with things in our minds, with all of our assumptions that are leading us to be, for instance, miserable, or like other people say, in low vibes, etc., lower emotions. Because from what I understand with this regressing is, when I take in my mind a path, for instance, a goal, that I will do that, then my mind is filling the gaps of how to achieve this goal, for instance, write a book or publish something, etc. And if we are only on this path, we are focusing on this. But if we fail for a moment, we cannot be still on this path, because, for instance, it may be wrong. Sometimes we have an intuitive feeling before starting something that we do not want to start this project, for instance, that we have like some resistance, but not like laziness, etc., but resistance that something is wrong. Something is wrong with that. And I experienced, that's why I'm talking about regressing, because I was a teenager, all this stuff, in our modern world, all of the distraction, internet, school, etc. And because of that, I experienced and I learned, it was a huge lesson when it comes to regressing, that at some point you are failing so much, and if you are still taking this one route that your mind is thinking is the best and the appropriate, at some point you start losing everything. You feel that you not only failed this project, but you start losing everything because you are not on your path, on your, let's say, divine path, that is beneficial to you, that is cool, that is blissful, in flow, in Tao, with your life, etc., and with everything. And at some point you are so obsessed that you feel like you lost everything, and that's why you need to go back to the present moment, because in pursuit of that you are not in the present moment, you are on some imaginary timeline, let's say, to just create a metaphor, to achieving something that maybe isn't relevant, isn't necessary, or is bad for you. And you are like in a state of, you're not grounded for sure, but you're in a state of between. You aren't on this earth, you aren't on a good timeline, on a good scenario for your life, etc. And that's why this is the only, I think, solution for most of the problems, just to go and relax for the present moment. Sometimes you will need to let go of some things, you will feel those feelings, emotions, relive again those things to learn, because in the present moment, you mentioned the abundance, because in the present moment, it is only the present moment in which you can choose your future. You can do this, you can do this, you can go for A, go for B. But if you are obsessed on this part, as I mentioned, on this journey for something that you are obsessed about or are pursuing, or maybe intellectually you think is right, then you do not have abundance of choices. You have one choice, you go for it. And this is one, I think, of the things within the hustler and grinding community and all of the YouTube, red pill stuff, this masculinity that you should, be determined and go, whatever the obstacles. But sometimes those obstacles and all of those bad things that are happening are because maybe this thing, if you achieve it, you will feel miserable. Maybe it will fail your life. Maybe it will destroy you because you would lose your health on the way. So the present moment is abundant because now in the present moment you can create. This is the only in the present moment that you can choose. You can create one path, the second path, and in the present moment you can actually check if the path that you think you should go for is good. Because if I'm in the present moment, I am feeling relaxed and I think of something, of some path, of some goal, etc. And I feel bad about it. I feel something wrong. And then I feel another path, it's relaxing, it's in flow. So that's why you said also the path, I would say, of least resistance, of no resistance, as you mentioned. And of on that path of least or of no resistance, you will achieve everything, with no effort. So this is the best path. So I think that the solution, and that's why you sometimes need to downgrade, because sometimes you're so, 2 years in that path that isn't good for you, and for 2 years you feel maybe a little bit, maybe more or less miserable. Then you need to go back 2 years and choose a path again. Maybe change a career for some people. Maybe change, the way you live, etc. So that's why I talked about the downgrading. And also because we will now go into the deja vu, into lost history of humanity, but I mentioned cycles. Some people say this karmic, etc. But we have things that maybe are cool for us to experience, maybe are beneficial for us to experience. And I mentioned that sometimes we feel as I mentioned, maybe we are 2 years into the bad path that we took, and we were too obsessed about it that we didn't realize is bad. So at some point we are so maybe miserable, so much into it, that we believe we have an assumption that we lost something. Maybe we lost a person, maybe we lost an opportunity, a job, etc. But as I mentioned, it is that we may not have the same opportunity again, But in our logical minds, and without the abundance of the present moment, we often think that it is lost, that there is no other opportunity. But as you mentioned, everything is one, everything is interconnected. And if we are meant to either achieve something or to experience something or to be somewhere or to meet someone, maybe even though you lost 2 years of your life, not lost, but you used those 2 years in a bad way, maybe after those 2 years, if you go into the present moment, you will experience the same thing. And I think that all the things about the karmic cycles are because of our bad decisions, that we didn't chose the high vibrational, the most effortless path, but we chose something bad, maybe from our anger, maybe from our greed, etc. And I think that's all about the cycles. And in my book, apart from the lost history, I mention some scenarios, some events from our history that repeated exactly over the zodiac cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. And I found out that, of course, after one zodiac sign which lasted for about 2160 years, there were completely different things happening in the world. It was ancient Rome which repeated events from ancient Rome which repeated in our modern world of 1800s and 1900s. And the world was different. But there were similar wars, there were similar decisions to be made by some people. So they had an opportunity after that zodiac cycle to again experience those things that maybe they misbehaved, they chose maybe a bad path, maybe they chose negativity, etc. But then after 2160 years later, there it wasn't ancient Rome, of course. It was America, it was Europe, etc. But those people who may be reincarnated were able to experience those same things that they wanted, but that they lost. So it is the same with all of the cycles in our lives. We think that we lost someone, something, but we will feel if we are in the present moment that there is abundance of things and that we may have another chance of doing that.
Right, right. The epiphany or that realization is what I'm very curious about because, humans the structure of their very nature are very introspective, analytical, cynical, fear-based. They want to reproduce and live for another day. That's the mechanism of a human being. And then, of course, you discover that there's something so much more than that. But in essence, that's sort of like what you're subject to from your day-to-day experiences and through, past generations. This sort of baton has been, handed on and handed on. And I would agree, this cyclical sort of like cycle of spirituality, atheism, religion, and we just keep going through these cycles in a realization, and then whatever, as they would say, you mentioned reincarnation, which is another interesting insight. Okay, so with that as sort of like another another line on the menu of what you perceive your reality is sort of interesting, because that leads into a much deeper awareness of this present moment that you keep speaking of, because it's so powerful. I understand that through my own exploration, and perhaps I've had many physicists on this channel before. One specifically comes to mind, Tom Campbell. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Tom Campbell. Anyway, he mentions his theory, and he all scientists go back to the same thing, whether you can crunch numbers or not. It ends with a theory, right? So the theory is, the large consciousness system gives you, whatever you're ready for. I tend to share with people, entering into, my own journey and my relationship with Taoism, understanding that I'm my true essence is I'm an eternal immortal, and I'm having a human being experience, and this is another reincarnation of a knowing that I've experienced hundreds of lives before this. And so this way I'm able to tap into a state of consciousness that helps with the collective of people realizing their own inner power, that this is all interconnected, and the greater nature of reality is, abundance, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And then, of course, we speak of this sort of like idea that because for most it's conceptual until otherwise noted. I always like to tell people, you want empirical data, you want experiential, in, you know, logged realization. Because I mean, as a human, it's conceptual until otherwise noted. And I always remind people, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. When you realize that and you understand that that validation comes with your experience. And so we can talk about a lot of these sort of like ideas of how we perceive reality, but I always bring people to a point where I'm a show me guy. I'll show you. I'll do something that would be on your framework of understanding of how consciousness is realized. And then just the fact that you've stumbled on the word consciousness, you're already opening the dial. You're already opening a different viewpoint of reality. But then it comes down to an experience, something that you can then qualify, quantify as your truth, whether it's manifestation, magic, healing. Now, when I say, and I talk about physical healing, and when I say magic, I'm talking about an inner architecture, an understanding about getting into the sacred symbols that are realized through the DNA strand on a much deeper level, that we're all made up of numbers, words, letters, symbols. This is the truth of how we gravitate from my realization to a much deeper way. Like I gravitate to the scriptures of Taoism, then realizing a realization that, through my experience of being ordained as a priest in 2 lineages of Taoism, this refreshed all this other stuff. Now, on a much deeper level, I can concentrate my understanding and knowing that goes for many lifetimes beyond this, and I can access this consciousness in a fraction of a second. That when I first started my journey 32 years ago, might have taken me, hours. Might have taken me hours to get into this state of realization, because I always tell people, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And feeling is the true core answer to all things. And so you use this physiology, this soft technology, this flesh and blood that you perceive as self, you use it as a tuning fork for the universe, and all things become realized. Because even when you go outside, you go inside. And the truth is, that still is a registered experience that has to go somewhere. And even though you may come to, and will come to, if you're in the presence of Alexander or myself, you're going to come to the realization that consciousness is this present moment. It's all things. It's not bound between our ears, yet there is a register of that. And so, as Tom would say, the large consciousness system is giving you this experience. Now, when it comes to karma, this is an interesting thing. How we see it within Taoism, karma is really fundamentally based on the perception of your reality. So your belief system will determine whether you're subject to karma or not. And your karma is determined by what you believe. So what does that mean in a nutshell? If you see a ladder and you walk under the ladder and you believe you're going to have bad luck, well, you're going to get bad luck. If you walk under that ladder and you believe you're going to win $1 million, you'll walk out the other end and there will be $1 million. That is the true nature of all things. What are your thoughts on that, Alexander?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say that you mentioned taking your power back. And I think that when it comes to either intuition, epiphany, choosing something, as I mentioned, some one route, route A, route B, it all comes down to our state. Some people say state of consciousness, but it is state, you mentioned also of knowing. But I feel just, go for the bliss that you feel inside. If you feel bliss on this road, just go for it. The same, I think, with karma, reincarnation, etc. Some people, especially I think in Poland, it is very, very, when it comes to conspiracy theories and spirituality, it is one of prevailing beliefs that we are a prison planet or reincarnated as in prison because, someone is, against as someone wants to hide our spiritual powers, etc. I think it may be a little bit cultural because Poland had a very violent history, but I think that, as I mentioned, bliss. Sometimes we want to experience something and we feel blissful about it. And I think it is the same with reincarnation. Maybe, it's just like a video game. Maybe I want to, and you mentioned religions gravitating towards one religion, another gravitating towards culture. It's not only religion, gravitating towards a certain place because maybe you want to experience that. Maybe I have a deep desire that I feel blissful about, that I want to be like a medieval monk. So I go and incarnate as a medieval monk because I feel blissful. I feel good about it. I just want to be that. And I think that it is, as you mentioned, karma, what we believe in. If I believe that I want that, on a deeper spiritual level beyond, of course, the physical body and mind, and maybe I really want that, just as I want to watch a movie maybe about this, or I want to maybe play a video game about it. I think that, it is our choice to either reincarnate or to have, like some people say, karmic relationship or karmic events, etc. Because maybe we want to maybe heal something from the past. Maybe we destroyed something. Maybe in this incarnation, maybe in the previous ones, maybe we destroyed something. Maybe we were bad people, and it isn't that we have punishment, divine punishment, or we go to hell, but maybe we just want that. And if we don't want that, it is like belief. If I believe this, I go for this. If I believe that, I go for that. The same with, if I feel that, oh, I made a mistake, but it isn't a great deal, I'm okay with that. So I don't re experience that. But I think, oh, I made a mistake. Maybe I'm not like in a very negative emotion of hopelessness, etc. But maybe I just feel that, oh, I made a mistake and I need to, give something to those people, to retribute for all of my mistakes. So I go and I have all of the not only reincarnation, but maybe in this life, I have all of those opportunities. I feel inside, I have the knowing that it will happen because I deeply as a soul want it. So this is a great misunderstanding, and I think that everything comes to taking our power back and what we feel and know, because when you feel like a blissful state, etc., you know at the same time. Maybe not in every detail, but when you come back to the present state, you relax, let go, you have the feeling of a little bit knowing of what lies ahead of you. So I think it all comes back. It is a little bit about also about high vibration and low vibrations. And even I think you are aware of the Hawking scale of consciousness, high vibrations, low vibrations. It is interesting because some people say that it is in the masculine grinding community that if you are happy all the time, you're a loser, you're weak, etc. But if you are truly maybe not happy, because happiness may be about the emotions, but if you are blissful, if you are joyful, you will see that you have much more power than those people who are grinding with anger and doing all of those things from anger, from maybe some lust, etc. In this masculine grinding community especially. So it is about knowing, about feeling, and you will feel at the same time what is right. And I think that the Hawking scale of consciousness is cool because, as I mentioned about choosing things, A, B, C, different routes. One route I feel miserable, so no, I'm not taking that because maybe the effect will be bad for me. Another route I feel maybe neutral. It is okay, but if it is neutral, maybe to myself it is boring to some extent. But I feel route C, which is blissful, which is fun, which is in flow, in tune with me. So I take that, and I think it is the same with experiencing maybe other incarnations, because there are many of different, we say, assumptions that we shouldn't assume. Spirituality, I think, should be the programming of everything we assume about. That we shouldn't assume that reincarnation is because of that, because it's stupid. The same is with science. I'm okay with science, but science has main assumptions. One of the main assumption is materialism, that only matter and its interactions exist. If I was to explore the world, I shouldn't assume that only matter exists, because it is being in a bubble and not experiencing things outside of this bubble. So the same with spirituality. We shouldn't assume, oh, I reincarnated, maybe I have some karma, maybe I'm bad, etc. I think that it is our, as you mentioned, belief. But belief is also our choice. If I believe something, I choose it. You know what I mean? So maybe I chose this incarnation to experience things, to maybe not have fun, but maybe I have fun working at something. Maybe I have fun, maybe doing something. Maybe some people have fun, experiencing regrets or some lower emotions. It may be like that. Sometimes we experience those lower emotions, but we feel again blissful about that because we know it was our blessing, because it was a lesson that we wanted. So we came to the beginning about assumptions and the minds.
I think it it's so powerful that when everyone comes to this epiphany, and the more and more people that acquire that just by your, as we talk about vibration, you talk about the Hawkins scale. I find it interesting. It's all relevant if you want it to be relevant. It's sort of like everything in this perceived reality, starts as energy, light, wave, particle, matter. It's all realized, and you create the tapestry from a thought form, creating an emotion that generates a feeling. Now that can be debated as whether it's a feeling and an emotion, or they're two of the same. I find them quite different, and when I teach people how to understand that, you start to get a better realization. Within Taoism, we want you to have a journey up the mountain. The journey of a Taoist is, the mountain is yin. On one side of the mountain is yin, one side is yang. You move up the mountain and merge the two together and be realized as all things. That's the mother of all things. And from a more scientific perspective, we're talking about 0 point scalar energy, waves that are beyond the measurable state that you would consider just electromagnetism within this earth plane. There's a fundamental frequency that cannot be measured by anything that we have technologically within mankind as it is now. Yet you can experience it. You can feel, like you and I have been feeling. I'm a big believer, and it's the feeling is the key answer to all things. And you mentioned it many times in your understanding of your reality, that feeling is a huge component. It's what you feel about. A dear friend of mine, his quote is, Hans says, "You're either contracting or expanding. What makes me contract? What makes me expand?" And that's how I use that to navigate my reality. Now, this, I think, is a fantastic viewpoint, yet it's still subject to emotional content. And that guy specifically, that dear friend of mine, also believes in karma. So there's a certain element where within Taoism, we look at emotions as a distraction, basically a false reading of reality, because as my dear friend Martin, who's a Buddhist monk, he calls it the distortion. And to really get into moving back from and being in this cycle, what we call first person, third person, no person, the present moment, all things, no title, place, person, or thing, is when the secret source is realized. From my journey, from my experience, from what I teach people, that is a fundamental. And I think you and I agree that the present moment is all things. So, the emotional state is getting to a point where, as Martin would say, the distortion, you're able to be the no person, where I teach people the first thing in their infancy of journey on their path to, the mother of all things, Tao, is emotions are a distraction. So instead of attempting to create this archetype, stereotype, and move into virtue signaling, I like to call it, where I'm a good person, I'm virtuous, I took my shirt off my back, I gave my last $5 to a homeless person, I sold all my material items. God, please, why are you not helping me? Because the universe does not have a moral compass, my friend. And so you have this deeper understanding that is an access point to all things. Everything has an energy, everything has a vibration, and with that has a frequency. To obtain that, you must resonate at that frequency to meet that. So when someone mentions God, Jesus, Buddha, Tao, my teachers, Lao-Tzu, Supreme Purity, Jade Purity, Highest Purity, Ling Bao, Jade Emperor, everything has its individual vibration, frequency, and then when you understand that, you can resonate with it as you are individual in every sense of the word, yet you and I are the same and part of the collective, but we still have our own frequency, our own vibration. And when we are able to resonate with that, and that comes from realizing this present moment, then all of a sudden we're resonating the same. We're there. And I believe that holding that is truly the gateway to endless possibilities, endless anything, infinite, abundance, timeless, limitless. And so when you get there, you want to be able to hold it. And that really comes down to, where we get into the deeper inner alchemy sort of like practices, where you create an infrastructure, an architecture of energetics that are palpable, that are as tangible as your physicality, but they're internal. And then they're also external, and they're all things. Yet once you switch that on, it's a whole new ballgame, and you're off to the races, because now you can really discern, affirm what's going on, and it's not sort of like what you consider sort of like a psychotic episode, and you can't qualify or quantify it because you're lost for a way to measure it, and there's still a level of measure. So you want to be able to repeat that, and for Martin, as a Buddhist monk, he's not interested in the inner alchemy that I teach people and being able to transmute the 50 trillion cells that you perceive as your humanist, your physical body, and take that 0.07 millivolts of electricity and condense that into an actual source of energy that you can maestro any way, which way you want, in the form of manifestation, in the form of magic, in the form of physical healing. When you say physical healing, when I'm bear witness to a physical healing that I see every single day, and I have for over 30 years, you see the physical flesh transmute and shake and wiggle in front of your very eyes, and it goes back to the default. And people are like, "Whoa, how is that possible?" I'll take something as simple as envelop my forearm, which is part of Qigong and Nigong, take a skewer, run it through my forearm, and people go, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Pull it out, no blood, no pain, no anything. It's a state of consciousness. And that's changing the structure of it. And you get to that state, and that's still the present moment. What are your thoughts on that, my friend? Your energetic practices, you must have something.
Yes, you provided great examples about a Buddhist friend, about Tom Campbell. Everyone is describing reality in some words like consciousness system or Buddhist, about that. But it is what I mentioned in a different context at the beginning of the video about the assumptions. A Buddhist have its own assumptions about the reality, about spirituality. Christian has another set of those assumptions. But what I found out is the best way, and you mentioned it is similar to your concepts in Taoism, to have no assumptions. And many other spiritual practices, like in Hinduism and also in Buddhism, also are telling like some practices of not having a body. Because if I am right here, right now, I have some deeply engraved in my mind assumptions that I have an identity, I'm Aleksander Czeszkiewicz, etc. So maybe some are unconscious, of course, and that I have a body and the body behaves like that and I move like that, etc. But as I mentioned, the key to creation, and you mentioned in the alchemy, is I think having no assumptions. Because if you have no assumptions, you mentioned healing. if you have no assumptions about how the body behaves when you're cut or when something bad happens, then you can create the outcome, whatever you want, as you mentioned with the manifestation. So the same thing, too many people have too many beliefs and assumptions that they will go this way, this career, that they will finish these studies and they will go to this job, etc. And that's why I think in many cases, in most of the cases, in almost all of our lives, we sometimes have something that is miserable, because it is for us to be conscious, to be aware. And the more you are conscious, the more you are aware, the less assumptions you have, because those assumptions are, I think, taking your consciousness, taking your awareness from being just conscious here and now. Because if I'm relaxed, I let go of all the things that are happening in my life, of all the things that I will do tomorrow, of all the things that I planned to be doing, etc. So I am going more and more conscious because I let go of things. And if we are not going off things, as I mentioned at the beginning, if we are going all the time in grinding hustler mentality that I will go this way, and what should I do next? How should I get that? How would I do that? Then you have all of those assumptions and you cannot manifest because you are not conscious. Because all of your, let's say that our consciousness, our awareness is also, as you mentioned, energy. Everything is energy. It is the same with consciousness, because maybe I have this huge lens and half of it goes to this assumptions, half of it goes to this, and I have like too little energy to manifest anything new. I have to let go of all of those stuff to have all of the energy available to manifest those things. And the more you are conscious, the less assumptions you have, the more you can manifest, as you mentioned, with healing wounds, physical healing. Also, I think that the energy you mentioned, also I agree totally with that with our present state of knowledge and science and technology, we cannot measure this energy, that this energy is something different from the energy like in thermodynamics, etc. It may have some of the same laws that you cannot destroy them and create that it is all one and it is like a conservation, something like that. But I think that we cannot measure the energy and that this energy is something different. And we often talk about, you mentioned Tom Campbell, matrix, simulation, universe, etc.
A
I
theory.
think yes, but but it is, it is like a metaphor to how
Sure.
our reality works. And the matrix, we think matrix like the movie, like illusion of reality, but the matrix, it is in Polish, it is like maciej. Matrix is a mathematical term. It is like having all of those numbers in a specific combinations, like having a square and you have rows and rows of numbers. And I think that the energy you mentioned, manifestation, is what manifests those possibilities. So the entire universe, whether it is mathematical or not, is, we may say, like matrix. And the energy, I make a metaphor here, but the energy is what, and our consciousness, of course, is what changes this reality, not our physical action. Physical action, is only on one thing. I can focus my hand on one thing, on doing one thing, or moving in that direction. But the consciousness is this energy that can, we sometimes in spirituality say that this reality, this manifestation will collapse. And this is from physics, that there are plenty of possibilities. At the right moment, if I let go of everything and I am conscious, there are plenty of possibilities. And it is my energy that can choose a possibility. And this energy can go there, then, and like a snowball, go, and finally I have the manifestation. And of course, the more consciousness, let's say, I have, the more energy. It will be faster, it will be slower, etc. And that's why I think many people are at some point in their life miserable, because it is this life energy that want to tell them that you shouldn't focus on this, that you shouldn't focus on eating that, on eating bad foods, on doing this, because if you have more energy and if you focus on something else, you will have better things in your life. The same people in spirituality often say that you focus on which you focus, this grows. So if you focus on lack, you experience lack, because you are not experiencing, you are not focusing, you are not choosing the abundance. You think that there is only lack, so there is only lack in your life. But then there happens that there is to less of things, let's say, and you feel miserable, and then you let go of things. You cannot stand them anymore. And then you feel, oh, there is something different. This blissful, this state of knowing, oh, there is something different. And in my case, I often then think how stupid I was to think that this is the only way, that this is the only route, that it was, of course, this scarcity, let's say, mentality, because I was not present, because I was focusing maybe on low vibe, because often when we pursue something, some goal, even in, as I mentioned, the hustler grinding community today, so it is often from lower vibes, like from anger, like from lust, or from desire to have something. So I think that's how it works.
Yeah, I agree with fundamentally a lot of things in how you perceive stuff. It's kind of like you're probably going to get a lot of like haterade from using assumption, because that's one of the and I'm not a personally not a big fan of the laws of the universe. So one of the laws of the universe would be assumption, right? So within manifestors, like people that are in the manifestation world or self-realizing world of mastery, that is a big thing. They love to use that to acquire their goals. And, again, I would say all that is sort of like interesting, because some people will fall on hermetic, comedic sort of like principles of reality, mentalism in definition, that everything is mind, everything is mental. I could sort of understand that, but again, when it comes to my interactions with Thoth, directly channeling him, because I channel energy and spirits all the time, he's not a high frequency, as you would put it, Alexander, a high vibration, high frequency sort of energy, quite frankly. So there you have this interesting interaction. I would sort of rewind back to the very nature of the present moment as being truly the answer of all things. And as you have put it, the assumptions, as I always tell people, there's a million ways up the mountain. And the first thing, the most important thing you must identify is, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. And so, okay, yeah, because you're going to have an angle, just as Alexander just said for the audience. It's like, well, this person had this way, this person has that way. My general understanding is not conceptual; it's all experiential. So I can show you the realization of a manifestation. I can show you a physical healing. I can show you the techniques and the mastery that Taoists have been using for tens, hundreds of thousands of years, with internal alchemy that has been handed down for generation to generation, that through that processes, you will acquire a state of consciousness. Again, my dear friend Martin, who's a Buddhist monk, has his own access to consciousness, and he's not really that, he doesn't really care about the internal alchemy that much. He's more about being the observer and removing the dukkha, which is the distortion from his reality. That's how he puts it. And that's what excites him. That's what makes him whole. That's what gives him the present moment. I think that's brilliant. Just as your understanding, this incredible insight that you have, is another way to observe and perceive and validate what it is that you're experiencing. And the only truth is your truth. And the only validation is when you believe it, when you experience it at a level that is undeniable, that you can go, yes, this is true to me. What Alex is saying, what Sun Qing is saying, what Martin is saying, whoever it is, Dalai Lama, Buddha, God, universe, whatever is that. And we come back to that common thread, which is that feeling state. That feeling is like how it makes you feel is so critical to the gravitational stuff. So when you did this, like you're extremely sensitive to energy, as I can see, very, very sensitive. And that's just looking at your aura and your energetic channel, specifically your lung channel, is extremely heightened. So for all the OGs in the channel and people that understand energetics, even from the concept of traditional Chinese medicine, understanding there's 12 meridians, That's actually patently false. There's actually 36 up to 81 meridians in the physical body, but that's never revealed because the true understanding of the nature of all things alchemy when it comes to energy from a Taoist perspective has been hidden for thousands and thousands of years. And you never really hear that much. You get some benign sort of I would call it a half-assed offering from someone who's stolen a few bits and pieces from, something as simplistic as a microcosmic orbit and said, this is the baseline of, how Taoists cultivate their energy. Sure, but I've yet to see one in the Western world that is truly complete. And that's the stuff I teach people, is that complete aspect. And when you do it, you validate it instantaneously. So with that sensitivity, did you come to that realization from now? I will mention one caveat. With this sensitivity also comes the emotional state of anxiety and OCD. So there's a part of that where these are the emotional traits that come with this sensitivity, and your ability to ground is also another thing which is really quite profound. Do you want to speak on more on your energetic potential?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was actually one of the first things that I will start at the beginning. When I never had any assumptions about religion, God, etc. I was not caring. Poland is Christian still, and was especially when I was very young. But no, I thought of it like a cultural thing that people go to church, etc. But I wasn't caring as when I was a child. And as I mentioned, I had no assumptions, so I was like an agnostic, let's say. Like when I was like up until 5, 6 year old or something. But then the school started and I started having more and more assumptions because I saw that scientific view is logical. It's good for technology, it's good for development. So maybe there is no God, there is no spirituality, maybe there is this materialistic realm. So I would say that I was agnostic when I was very young, and then for a large part of my life up until like 15, 16, when I started digging deeper and deeper, not only as you mentioned outside for resources, for podcasts, books, etc., but also internally. So it is also like a mirror that you can go you can go outside, but you will end inside. You can go. It is also mentioned hermetic tradition. I really like hermeticism when it comes to the ancient one, not this Kybalion, etc. I think that this is this. I think that this is distorted. But when it comes to the original hermetic thought, which was actually to give a historical context, was created in Alexandria at times when in Alexandria there was knowledge from all around the world, from India, from Persia, from Babylon, from Mesopotamia, from Egypt, from Greece, because it was after the conquest of the Alexander the Great. So it was like, multicultural thing. So I would say that it is like nowadays in New Age we want to connect every religion. So it was the same with Hermeticism. And Hermeticism is telling you that you can, and it is also in the medieval alchemy, that you do not need to go and have a telescope and go search for planets, universe, stars, etc. You can go inwards. But the same thing, you don't need to go inwards, go for the stars, and the more you analyze them, the more you go inwards. So this is to give a little bit of history to that. But when it was a very interesting story because I started to being agnostic. Then I was, because of the science school and all of those information, I started to be an atheist, I would say. And then I started rediscovering spirituality, which is a little bit different because, the skeptics are saying that people start because of their religion, start with some false assumption, false beliefs about God and universe, and then as they progress in their intellectual stuff, they start to be atheists. But it was completely in reverse for me. So I wouldn't say, I would say that atheism is a little bit arrogant because I understand being agnostic, that I don't know. If you haven't experienced, haven't realized it yet about the universe, spirituality, God, etc., then okay, you are on your path. But if you say no, there is no, it is, I think, a little bit arrogant, and I think it is a little bit low vibe, and it is like science, being in its own bubble. You are not going forward. You are just in your own bubble. But it, as I mentioned, it was an interesting story because because all those years at school made me, you're just a human being. So you're, as I mentioned at the beginning, just a machine made out of flesh. So I was behaving like that. I was okay. So let's start. And it was fake for me for all those years. And then I started rediscovering spirituality, and it started with being more intuitive. More, I didn't want to be fake anymore. And then I realized that, as I mentioned, going back when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old, I was also very intuitive. I didn't care about God, religion, etc., but I was seeing stuff. I remember, it is silly, but I was really afraid of, sleeping at night because I was seeing and also hearing stuff. I was hearing like someone is moving chairs in another room, but there was no one to be moving chairs there, and I could see, through the corridor that it is impossible. So it was like, having clear audience, as some people, label it, because it is
That's
again a label, an assumption. But I remember that it wasn't just, primitive, like maybe some primitive instincts of being afraid of the dark, but there was more to it. I could see, feel, hear things, and I suppressed it for many years because I thought that, it is insane, that I am stupid or something like that. So at the same time that I started researching externally and logically for sources, for evidence, for material stuff, at the same time, parallel to that, I started having like prophetic dreams. And it was funny because these dreams were completely not relevant. It was like random things from our everyday life that are completely irrelevant, have no meaning, completely stupid stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis, but stuff that is so improbable that I think that it these were prophetic dreams, actually, that it couldn't happen to be that I dreamed of something and it happened. It was so improbable. So it is a little bit, as I mentioned, flowy, not like I did that, I experienced that. It was all at once. It is, as you mentioned, energy. It is like a, not bubble, like a cloud of energy. And here a prophetic dream, here remembering that when I was 4 or 5, different things were happening, then those things that started happening, and then the energy, seeing auras. I also started seeing, analyzing auras, energies, etc. And once, when I was on a really boring lecture, I was sitting, there were those slides that are not good for your health, to say the least, but those slides created a very, very different environment, and I was that boring, and I was just not focused, just looking unfocused because I am on the lecture. And then I started seeing energies around the lecturer, around other people, in the area, in the room, actually, not only when it comes to people, but also the energies of the room.
Yeah.
Maybe something was on the wall. So it was a little bit crazy, but I started, learning, discovering without assuming anything, because some people with, for instance, a Christian background would assume that, oh, it is like Satan, demons are attacking, or I see an energy around this person, it is like demonic or something like that. Another person would, with new age beliefs, oh, this is auras, this means that, this means that. But I was just experiencing it. And that's why, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not against science, of course, but I think that we shouldn't assume anything. And science is having at its core a few assumptions, especially materialism, which is a bad thing to assume when we want to explore the universe, which may be infinite. Who knows? So it is a bad thing to assume that there only exists matter and its interaction, and it is one of the main assumption of the scientific method. So I am against that part of science, of course, and that's what I learned, that you shouldn't assume anything. You shouldn't be too attached to a tradition, a religion, or an assumption again. you just should explore, just, be conscious, be aware of everything, and then you will discover the truth. Because if you are not aware, you are projecting things on the things that exist there. You project that, oh, maybe the pyramids were built by aliens, or maybe they were built by ancient Egyptians. I don't know who built the pyramids, okay? So the same with the universe, how it works. You may, oh, this is only matter, oh, I'm having like not psychotic dreams, but maybe hallucinations. This is untrue, this is my mind making up stuff. But if I go, okay, it just is, then you start discovering the truth. And that's how we should approach the world around us. Just be. And also on the scale of Hawkins, it is interesting that at the high, there are different, like states of consciousness, like love, joy, etc. But at the top, like the top states are that it just is. It isn't neutral. Neutral is something lower, but it just is, And with this also attitude, it is easier for you in life because you don't care if everything just is. If you don't have assumptions, you don't care that much. You are not attaching yourself. But if you have assumptions, oh, I have desire to have this, then it isn't that the world just is for you. You start to be very attached and you think, oh, those people hate me because they prevented me from achieving it, for instance. Oh, I blame my childhood for that. And you create problems. And if for you there are no assumptions or you do not care, the world just is, then you have no problems because you're not attached to things. You're only in the present, in the current state of affairs. But because we often, even in psychology, materialistic psychology, we say that people have imaginary problems, that we over explanate some things, that, oh, it is so bad that it happened, or that we have imaginary problems, that we are maybe afraid to go on a job interview. Oh, maybe they would say this about me, or on a date, oh, maybe this, or maybe I should dress like that or like that. But if you do not have those assumptions that, oh, they will, because you start creating scenarios, you create your own reality with that, as you mentioned, with believing. You believe, oh, if I dress like that, they won't like me. Oh, if I say this, they won't like me, they won't accept me, for instance, to a job. And you create those scenarios, you create your own reality, or you're very, as you mentioned, anxious, you're afraid. And if you do not have those assumptions, you do not care. I don't know what will happen. Maybe there won't be an interview at the first place. Maybe the people won't show up, actually. Or maybe it will be, I don't know, fake or something. You know what I mean? You don't care. There is an endless possibility. If you do not have assumptions, if you assume something, you to some extent believe in it. You, as I mentioned, the collapse of in the physical, in the physical stuff, this world collapses to you. This scenario collapses to some extent. And if you do not have any assumptions and everything just is, you have no problems, and there is an endless possibility. As I mentioned, maybe this will happen, maybe this, I don't know. And this is where the fun begins, right? So maybe you're excited, maybe this will happen, you're actually excited to live. And if you have sometimes assumptions, problems, oh, I don't want that, etc. So I think that it is summed up very nicely. And again, we come back to the beginning of our conversation.
Right. So just in your admission of these type of sensory perceptions, because that's what I call it. So when I teach people internal alchemy, I go everywhere. So to create fluidity and the pulpability of these energy centers that exist within your flesh are very real. Right now, within the scientific community, you can measure these things. So the evidence of energy and what we call these vortices that are the actual tuning forks within your physical body are very real, very tangible, and they're sort of validated through many sort of indigenous practices from Taoism, Hinduism, across the board, Christianity, Catholicism, the deep mystic parts that they don't want to let anyone realize, Masonry, sort of like insight to everyone's got their own viewpoint of what it is and how it works. And you sort of have to step through your own experiences to validate that if that's something that's of interest to you. Now, I use it to teach people clairvoyant skills, mediumship, channeling, physical healing, manifestation, and it's a repeatable method that the Taoists have been using, and that's why that internal alchemy is so powerful, because you start off in what we call being created. You're birthed into this reality. You have a constitution we call Qing, which out of 100% battery life, most people always come in around 70, 80% with the potential of being 100% realized due to their genetic, hereditary sort of like history of what their ancestors handed to them. But then the potential of that with a realization, understanding things like epigenetics or just internal alchemy, that the possibilities are infinite. So you use the Taoist practices to saturate the physical body and bring your battery up to 100%. And then from 100%, you go to 1,000. From 1,000, you go to 100,000. And therefore, once you have a better understanding, you then no longer tap into your own physicality, because, what's an example of that? Emotional states. So emotional states, or your attention, intention, can then draw from your energetic field, and you get a response. If you're around someone who's very needy, what's the common name for that person now? A Karen, maybe. Guess what? If you're around a Karen, what I've called for many decades, what we call a psychic vampire, then if you believe that that person is going to basically perpetrate or commit harm to you by being around you, and you need to protect yourself from something, which is always what I find really funny, because you are me, I am you. What am I afraid of? We're all one, this present moment. Yet there is this fundamental need, within Chinese history specifically, there's a lot of superstition. So I deal with these types of scenarios quite often and have for many decades. And then, I help people evolve to a greater understanding of the true nature of the present moment. And they expand from the understanding and the mastery using these sort of vortices, and start to synchronize. And so you're synchronizing, you're creating a vibration. It has a frequency. That synchronization with that frequency, you create the resonance, and then the possibility resonating at that present moment that we speak of, then the possibilities are infinite. And yes, it doesn't come with a place, person, or thing. It has no title. We are just now. So for me to create a physical healing, I'm not sitting there in the lotus position, calling in my spirits, lighting 3 incense and singing to create that moment. It's now. So it has no place, person, or thing. So what's the last example of that was 2 days ago, one of my kids had, a toothache. She's got like teeth coming in, and her whole gum was swollen. And, most parents would be, oh my goodness, we need to take her to the doctor or the dentist or whatever. And, I took one look at it, attuned to the default setting, the present moment, and the swelling disappeared in 3 seconds. And you watch it with your very eyes. It goes, boop, gone. Oh, there's no pain, there's nothing. And of course, the next progression will be the complete development of that tooth. It will come through, and all things will be realized. But that is what I'm talking about. That's how it happens. So there's a progression, I believe, in your own digesting of how you perceive to get to a point of consciousness. I completely agree with when you talk about assumption, because it's really in definition an absolute, where the absolute is all things. That means that, when someone goes, this is the absolute truth, run quickly the other way. You got red flag, hurry up, because there is, in my opinion, the absolute truth is your truth. And that however someone brings themselves to this point of consciousness, it's for them to realize what that is. And it'll only be validated by their experience. It'll only be validated by what it is that they're creating or observing within their reality to validate that as true. And so with the energetic potential, and you're having these clairvoyant visions and things of that nature, Have you ever explored it any deeper than that, or did you just go, okay, that's just part of one of the facets I'm looking through? Wasn't really that big a deal. I'm very sensitive to energy. I can see these things, and I'm sort of continuing my journey. Or have you, excuse me, gone deeper into that and going, hey, I wouldn't mind being a little bit more proficient at moving this energy around, or having more clear senses, or anything of that nature? Have you explored that at all?
Yes, I'm actually exploring all the time. I even feel that I'm not at the tip of my evolution, and I'm not at the tip of my energies either. I am exploring all the time, and you mentioned about the manifestation, that not just manifesting, etc., in a lotus position. And I have a great example when you want to like experience something, like manifest something like a car or a house. And it is all about the assumptions, because you may think, oh, manifestation, my own car. You know what I mean? It is all about having no assumptions, because ownership is a man made thing, you know. Objects just are in this universe, on this planet, even to be more grounded. Things just are, and we have like social constructs that you own that, I own that, this you can buy. You know what I mean? So this is false. And if you want to manifest something, oh, I own a car, oh, I own a car, it is false. It is that false assumption. And you may even, many people may even like experiment. I am experimenting all the time, that when you think like of just of a car, just think, just it is, or another, any object you want, or not want, but also want is a little bit, you know what I mean. But if you think of an object in this way, as I mentioned, with no assumptions, that oh, it just is, I don't care, you are much more, I would say, feeling high vibrationally than in the state that manifesting ownership of something. Because ownership is again projection of you, that it is mine. It is a little bit like a grid, like I desire, it is mine, you know what I mean. The same as you mentioned, Karen, that it is mine right, that I will take. It is like taking the energy. And that's why it is much harder, or even impossible, to manifest that, because you are taking that energy, you are like greedy that it is mine. But if you just, oh, this just is, then you are like not taking the energy, or not negative towards it. So it is much easier for it to happen, as you mentioned. And this all, I think that, as you mentioned, being here and now, relaxing, and I would say, I would add from myself about the assumptions, letting go of those assumptions that you have about ownership, about manifesting, about having, then you will feel what is right, maybe to do to get something, or maybe what is right to manifest at this moment. So this is it, and I am constantly actually exploring it. And that's also, I mentioned parallel to that, there was a logical stuff like researching sources, etc. And because of that journey, I actually gathered a ton of knowledge. I have like 3 or 4 bookshelves like that, from ground to the top. So it was it still is, but it's been a long journey. And as I mentioned, sometimes you go inward, and this is the best, of course, case to manifesting, etc. But sometimes you may even have a feeling to go outside, go explore. Maybe not books or sources, but maybe go explore the world. And sometimes, you mentioned epiphanies. Sometimes we have a feeling, oh, I have a feeling to go, but a blissful feeling, not like a greedy feeling or something. I have a blissful feeling to go to walk to the forest. And then I am walking, I am letting go of everything, and then everything clicks in. All of the things that I was worried about, oh, how to do that, what shall I do next? Everything, like, as you mentioned, epiphany, everything clicks. Like many scientific achievements were also points of eureka, that, oh, suddenly, like, scientists were struggling for months or for years to solve something or to discover something. And then they let go, and suddenly eureka, everything happens. Like I mentioned, channeling, like you have this information inside of you. Maybe you had this information, maybe you had also this information about manifesting your dream life, or anything you want to experience. You have this, but because you have so many assumptions, you're in all of this mind state, you're not conscious of it. just becoming here and now, becoming conscious, and you can explore it. You will explore that there are some things like that, there are some things like that, and you shouldn't judge it. Some things like that, as I mentioned, I don't care. Things just are. So yes, I'm still exploring. I explored a lot, and I think that it is, as you mentioned, it's also, I think that exploring like that is also a case of alchemy, like intuitive inner alchemy, because you may discover by exploring your inner self, like without Taoism or Hinduism or other systems of energy, etc. Even if you don't believe in energy, you don't know anything about the energy, if you start exploring your mind, your feelings, everything, your thoughts, then you will realize that it is an alchemy because you are changing. You start feeling different. And this, I think, the same a little bit manifestation in modern times, I think, is distorted a lot. And I think that it is about some people feeling is the secret, of course, but I think that to some things you have to grow up internally, not on the outside, on the biological level, but as you mentioned, you have the feeling of these things of maybe healing, as you mentioned in your example. If you feel it, it happens. So the same thing to have maybe something, you dream of something, etc. You maybe need to go some levels, as I mentioned, maybe go backwards sometimes, maybe go forward. You need to alchemize this feeling, because sometimes I feel, especially if I, as I mentioned, want something and I'm on a bad route, on, or I have too many assumptions for that, then I feel bad about it. Maybe I feel something that, when it comes to manifestation, but I feel bad about it. Then I inquire into myself why I feel bad about it. Oh, because I am greedy in this case. Oh, because I feel that they made something bad to me in the past. And then I reevaluate everything and, oh, this is a false assumption. Oh, this is a false belief. And then this process is like alchemy. It alchemizes, it changes the energy. And then I'm closer and closer to the final goal. So it is also an alchemy.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. I think it truly aligns with what I just said. I think we're very much on the same path of understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding is still not knowing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
just as the Tao says, the way to walk is not the way. The name you name is not the name. The Tao you know is not the Tao. And so, this constant realization that when you accept you know nothing, you know everything, poof, there you go. All of a sudden, another consciousness click. You go walking in
Mm-hmm.
the forest. You let go of all things, and you all of a sudden the old expression "let go," as my kids would love that in relation to that movie Frozen. It's like let it go, let it go. It really is the simplicity of that. And so when you explore, I love this. Your understanding of it, where you're exploring it, and that's an alchemy. It also returns back to, you know, in some ways, validating what I'm speaking of in relation to the feeling, because when
Mm-hmm.
you feel through the internal alchemy of what we practice, Nigong, the inner power, you're able to repeat it because you're able to resonate and access that vibration, the frequency, resonate with it, and then repeat it. That's kind of critical to part of the energy in the internal alchemy we speak of. So it's like you're just saying it in another way, which I love, because you're like, well, to experience it, you're having these experiences that are then validated by the feeling. And it's like if you were able to get that resonation of that feeling, you can do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. And somehow I got blurred there for a minute, camera wise. But understanding, I think I just did that with a there we go. Look at that. So this is kind of like the potential of all things when you get to that realization. And so with the deeper nature of Alexander's discovery of consciousness and where you're at in your timeline, the deeper nature of that, going through history, looking at cycles throughout humanity, and what is logged in, what we call, ancient history that brings us to this point, what do you perceive the theme, the true awareness pinnacle, the present moment? What is that? Where are you at in your own journey right now, Alexander?
I need to research more. I have like this feeling that I need to research even more after reading hundreds of books. And I think also that because today we talked about the spirituality, we need some time to talk because I have tons of knowledge and I wasn't able yet to put everything into books or videos. I need to alchemize it into like clear vision as I did with my previous research because sometimes I have plenty of ideas, and as we mentioned about this clicking, this epiphany, I have the most epiphanies during like talks like this, either here in Poland or internationally. I'm just talking, as I mentioned, I don't care. I let go of all the assumptions. I prefer those flowy conversations, and I'm talking about this like today. I never thought that we will talk for like 1 hour and a half about spirituality, alchemy, and stuff like that. And and to sum up, this is the life without assumptions. This is the best because you don't know what will happen. There will be blessings all the way. No, you know because you have the feeling, but you don't know. You don't have it in your intellect, in your intellectual mind, and it's been a lot of exploration for me, and because of false assumptions, to sum up, I was delayed in plenty of things concerning my research and stuff like that, and I feel that it's time to let go of all of those false assumptions about this and that, about the skeptics, about the criticism sometimes, and just to do what feels right to do. And also from the context maybe of politics or of sociology or about the current state of the world, actually. I think that what we talked about today is totally, and it is totally against ideologies. And I think that the modern world is held back because of the ideologies, because we are not doing in a particular situation what is right to do, but we do what our ideology says we should do. We do what our religion says us to do. We do what some laws, maybe we are on the left wing, on the right wing. We are going for this. We are not doing what is right when it comes to like global stuff, politics, when it comes to wars, even. We are not doing what is right at the moment. We are doing what is politically correct. So that's the message for the finish, that we should do what we know, what we feel is right, even though we may not understand, we may not comprehend the entire picture. We may not comprehend, we may think that this feeling, maybe it is positive, but maybe in our minds we believe that it will lead to bad stuff. But if it is there, it will be true.
I think that's profound insight. What I want to do is have you back on the channel. We'll set up a time in the next week or
About
two
history, finally.
about the history part because it intrigues me so much. But I forgot to mention to you, I am coined the master of void of time and space. So what happens is once we get into this present moment, my friends, time disappears. As you realize, you're like, hello, what?
Mm-hmm.
It's been an hour and 30 minutes. How in Tao's name did it? Was it an hour and 30? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
easy. It's a flow. It's what we call fluidity, my friend, and that's what we're experiencing. So I want to just say this now. We're going to have Alexander back on the channel in the next week or two, and I'll set it up after we get off the podcast another time because I want to go over the history part because I believe that's an incredible superpower of yours is your deep insight into the history of the world and these ancient histories, and I really want to go deep on that. So in closing today, I want to ask you this. What is your definition of consciousness?
Consciousness. I would say from the logical perspective, because I was thinking a lot about it. Unfortunately, from the logical perspective, because I think that at the level of, or maybe different from the spiritual perspective, I think at our level of the evolution of our bodies, where we are as human beings, as intellectual like monkeys when it comes to our bodies and our mind that can comprehend stuff, I think that consciousness is beyond what our brains can comprehend. That's why only some very spiritual, maybe seers, maybe sages, maybe saints who achieved levels beyond the physical body can say what the consciousness truly is. And maybe that's why they say that that they don't know, but that it cannot be explained in word. I have like this feeling that the same with the universe. Science says that it is all matter, etc., because it is on our level of our brains. And why should some monkeys that evolved a little bit further as, you know, physical beings and intellectual beings, why should we be able to understand logically what consciousness, what the universe is, how it works? I think it is beyond, and that's why we need spirituality in the modern world, because we are at the point that if we go further into matter, we would lose ourselves. We will go towards transhumanism if we do not have spirituality or some other, you know, very, very negative route. So that's why we need spirituality, because it helps us maybe not understand logically, because you tell the definition or what means to you. It is an understanding logical thing again, but can
Assumption.
we can we explain it logically? Maybe not. Maybe we cannot even explain it in our words with our vocabulary. Maybe we even cannot, you know, cannot grasp. Maybe it is a little bit still beyond. Maybe we are even as as souls, maybe we are not on the level of it. No, not as souls, of course, but I think that at the level of our brains and of our bodies, and I think that it is, of course, a limitation, that spirituality can go beyond and can grasp, but in a different way. Spirituality isn't logical, isn't about understanding logically, analytically, like in science. That's why I think we may not be able at the current moment, or maybe even not in the like quite near future, understand and explain either consciousness, either the most like the highest workings of the universe.
I think that's a great beginning, my friend. It's the present moment. And with that said, I want to thank you, my friend, for coming on the podcast today. And I'm gonna put all your social everywhere that everyone can find you. But just for the audience, all the OGs, he's going to be back in a week or two. I'm going to set up a time today on when you can get back here, and we're going to go through all the ancient history that I want to really explore. So with that, I want to thank you, Alexander, for your time today. I want to thank the audience for their time sharing it with us. And I am your humble servant and seafood Taoist master, Sun Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.